Hi everyone, welcome to the ENOVIA R2022x GA What's New. We're going to review the new enhancements, the updates of some of the packaging and the new roles that have been introduced in this release. So let's start with some packaging changes in this release. As you can see here, some roles have been moved from GA to controlled availability. So we're talking about the service product related roles, service product contributor, manager, developer, and innovator. And we are introducing in this release 3 new roles. We start with the conversion data integrator for land XML. This role basically enables you to transform or format, take the formats of FOS into the format of the platform. And this role is available on-premise and also on the cloud. We are also introducing the sustainability role, Sustainable Innovation Manager, which is a cloud-only role. And we have a Digital Mockup Validation Manager role that is responsible for the design review on the web, on a widget. And this role is available both on-premise as well as on the cloud. Now let's start reviewing the enhancements of Collaborative Industry Innovator. We will start first with the electronic signature, which is available on the route tasks. There is a new setting that replaces the previous property key. This setting is available in the administration widget, and it allows the administrator to enable the e-signature definition while we are approving a task of a specific route. So in this setting, you have 3 options, whether this option is not required in the organization, so that will not be required for any approval task, or it is probably required for all the tasks, or you may want to force this electronic signature only in a specific route template. So when we talk about the electronic signature, we're talking about one of 2 capabilities here. The ability to receive a code on a specific device that is defined in the platform, and then you need to define this code, as well as the ability to define your login in order to approve the task. So then you define your username and the password, and by that you will be able to approve the task. Now, revisions can be added to a specific bookmark, and as you know, before this enhancement, these revisions were updated in the bookmark as well. So if I have a revision that was revised somewhere, then my bookmark will always show me the latest revision of this object, which was not always the best way to save, to have a view of the content of my bookmark, because I want always to use and to have a view of the same context in this bookmark. So what we did here, we are keeping always the same revision, no matter how many times we have revised the object outside the bookmark, but within the same bookmark, you will always have the same revision. It will not be replaced by the latest revision. Now we have extended the revision format, and it became more flexible. So this is available through a setting in the administration widget, the Collaborative Space Configuration Center widget. The administrator can define the usage of a revision format that will contain primary and secondary. And we see here an example of a primary. So this could be the first element of the revision that could be either numeric, like 1, 2, 3, or a letter A, B, C. And the secondary element, which is always 1, 2, 3, and so on. It's always numeric. This is defined in the revision naming rules, by the way you want to view and work with the revision elements, the primary and secondary. So the idea here is that we're giving more flexibility when we revise and when we generate new revisions out of released ones. So from this release, your revision can have either a formal revisioning, let's say, which is the primary element that will be updated. So A.1 might become B.1 if it was released and then it was revised. So the first element is incremented, and that represents a formal revision. If the secondary element is incremented, like A.1 becomes A.2 when we revise it, then that would represent some kind of informal revisioning. So That's the new way of looking at revisions when you want to revise it. So you freeze it and further on you release it. And once you revise a released revision, then the formal revisioning happens, which means that the primary element will be incremented to become B, for example, if it was A. There is now an implementation of groups within the tagging. So I can define my engineering definition based on tags which represent groups which are of interest of my standpoint. For example, we can define in a car the mechanical breakdown, and that could be a collection of different tags that represent the different breakdown elements which I'm interested to focus on within this engineering definition. So I tag all my engineering items based on this tagging, and then I can use the grouping capabilities in order to group these engineering items based on these tags. And further on, I have a visibility on a group, and that could be something I visualize within the engineering definition or in the 3D if I have 3D Navigate, for example, that will allow me to have a visual look from that specific standpoint. There is a new sharing tab which is available from the information panel and the property widget. This tab is available from Product Explorer, Bookmark Editor, and Collaborative Lifecycle apps. This tab basically allows you to add the sharing for the specific object that you want to share with other users or user groups. And you can also have a look and have understanding of with whom we have shared this content. So that's the idea, is that we are improving here the experience of the user through this sharing tab for the capabilities of adding users and groups, or for having visualization of with whom we are sharing this content that was done maybe by another user in the organization. Requirements now can be applied also in 3D markup, which means that I can add annotations, I can add comments, I can collaborate around my markups, my requirements using the 3D markup app. So it's not only available for engineering items, we can also apply all this functionality of 3D markup directly on requirements as well as requirement specifications. And obviously we're talking about requirements that were created and generated using the requirement engineer role, or the TRM. So this is a great way to collaborate around the requirements, giving feedbacks, giving all kind of comments and specific annotations that you want really to implement, and to express certain concerns probably around this content using the capabilities we have today in the 3D markup. We have streamlined now the access rules for the markup objects. So if I have a markup object now, it works exactly like any other object from collaborative space access rule behavior. So let's take here an example. Let's assume we have an enterprise that has design leaders and designers, and they want to share content with external suppliers. For that, we have created an external collaborative space where the suppliers have access to. So internally, we can create documents, and we can work on these documents, and we can also share them with these suppliers. However, if I create a markup in my internal collaborative space, this markup will not be visible by the external suppliers. And that's the whole idea. So I'm kind of separating the content which internally I want to share with, I want to collaborate, and I want only my internal users to review and view and have access to this content, and the content that is shared externally with suppliers. Suppliers can see the document, but they will not be able, in this case, to see the markups which have been created internally only for internal purposes. So let's see now the sharing tab. We'll start with the sharing tab from the Product Structure Explorer. I want to share this wheel with a supplier group, for example. So I'm using the sharing tab, and I'm adding now this group, which will be the supplier group that have access as a read only to this engineering item, let's say. And let's see now how we can see this sharing information from by another user in another app. So another user has access to the same wheel from a bookmark. So once he opens this bookmark, he can review this wheel. And from within the information panel, this user will be able to review the list of users or user groups that this wheel has been shared with. So that's visible information from the information panel. Now let's see how the e-signature works. This is the new setting. It's called e-signature management, which has 3 options to configure the e-signature for the users. And we will select now the requirement to have the approval task e-signature for all the approval tasks, not for a specific template. That means that whenever I want to approve a task, by adding the comments, I must add my login. I must define login before the task is completely approved. So we add a comment here, and once we click approve, then we need to define the login, as you can see here. And then once the login is validated, then the task will be approved and completed. Now we see here the new setting in the revision format. So we're disabling the minor revision, and we want to see now this new behavior of the revision. So let's assume we have this assembly of the shaft. I have a released component, it's the crank, and I want to make some studies on this component. So first let's revise it. It is released, it's A.1, I revise it, I get B.1. So as you can see, the primary element here has been incremented, and it becomes B.1, and that is in works. So I want to do some updates on this new revision. So we can make something simple here using the 3D Compose. So we will use this robot to change one of the measurements here in order to make some study, let's say, on a specific measurement that we want to analyze. So this is going to be the revision that we are going to freeze. And further on, we want to see what happens further on. So this revision for now is frozen. And after that, I'm going to create another revision, but this time it's going to be B.2 because it is not a formal revision, let's say. And we are going to make another study on revision B.2. And then we will make a decision B.1 or B.2 will be the one that will be finally released. So again, we are going to focus on this new revision B.2, and we're using the same robot in order to make another modification within this crank. So we make some changes here, and we save these changes. And finally, we make a decision, in fact, that this is the revision that we are going to release. So B.2 will be the released revision. And finally, this revision will be the one that we want to replace in the transmission shaft. So if I go to the transmission shaft, I can replace the old one with the latest one, and the system will automatically take the released one, which is B.2. So this way we have seen here the primary and the secondary elements of the revision, the way they behave, and we can see their history here. And now here, in the engineering definition here, we see the tagger, and let's say that we have defined groups of mechanical breakdown where I want to visualize my engineering definition based on these groups. So I'm selecting now the grouping of mechanical breakdown in the tagger, and I start focusing on specific groups, and the system will highlight in 3D each one of these groups. So as you can see here, we're highlighting, for example, the harness, then we can highlight the body. So we can see it from engineering definition point of view and from 3D point of view as well. So this is a good way that gives you a visibility and focus on what you need within the engineering definition. So you can make any definition you want in the tagger. This is just one example. Another example would be the zone. So you may want to define your product based on zones, front side, left side, right, and so on. And the same here, you can group your engineering definition based on these tags, and you can focus on specific zone of interest. For example, the top part of the car, and the system will highlight this engineering definition also in the 3D model to give you a better visibility. Now, just to tell you that this functionality exists also in the native client. We will have a separated session on that. So we are showing you here that it is also available in the CATIA product structure design as well. Let's review now the enhancements in the Change Manager or CHG role. And here we are introducing a total new widget, which is called Change Governance. And this new widget will allow you to create change requests, change orders, as well as change actions. So the concept here is that we are gathering all this content in a single widget where you can orchestrate your changes, you can define your impact analysis, you can define all the users who are involved in the changes, everything in a single location. And when we work with change requests, then we have also some new terms here. We have the affected items, we have the analysis basis, and we have the impacted analysis. So there is a lot of different capabilities and tools which will give you the best way to analyze the change and to ensure that the change is done correctly, and you have included all the possible impacted components and impacted objects within the same change. So within the change request, when I create a new change request, I have the ability to define either a simple change request or a detailed change request. And the difference is related to the impact analysis. In the first type of change request, the simple one, I can submit the change request for approval even though the impact analysis is not yet in state frozen. This is not the case for the detailed change request, where the system obliges me to have all my impact analysis in frozen state before I promote my change request to approval. In any case, once the change request is approved, then all the impact analysis also will be completed automatically by the change itself. So let's see an example. Let's assume we have a BIMI here, and the change coordinator wants to create a change request for that BIMI to make certain modifications and improvements. And she's creating now detailed change request. So the first thing that she wants to define, she wants to bring the BIMI as affected item. So this will be the affected item of the change request. Then she defines the members of the change. So first of all, the change coordinator will be the user, will be herself. And she selects here the CCB board, which is a route template that is added to the change request. And she defines now the impact analysis from different domains. So the impact analysis allows us to analyze the change from different domains. It could be mechanical, it could be manufacturing, and so on. In this case, we are using, for example, the sound engineering, the speaker engineering, and so on. So we have different impact analysis which are assigned to the right users in the organization. And these users simply will be notified once we promote the change request to in approval. So we'll start with the frame engineer. This user has now received a notification, and he will need now to analyze what will be the impact of this change on his domain. And by that, he starts the impact analysis using the analysis basis, and he defines what will be the possible impacted items. So he selects them directly from the platform, and he adds them as a list of impacted items. And at the same time, he can also add an attachment. So that attachment will help understanding what was the decision to add these impacted items, some specifications probably, and so on. Now, another user who is responsible for another impact analysis, that will be the sound speaker, for example, he receives a notification, and he also needs now to give his feedback and the way he sees things regarding these impacted items. So he picks up the relations, and from the relations of the BIMI, he can understand what are the children that might be potentially impacted. And then he picks up also the document that he wants to attach in order to give more clarity on this analysis. And also he defines the impacts in terms of cost, risk, implementation efforts, and so on. So all this information now will be visible and available for the change coordinator in order to make the next step and to promote the change request to the next maturity state. So she can also promote each one of these impact analysis to frozen, and then she promotes now the change request to in approval, so that the users who are involved in the approval process now will be notified. They will review the impact analysis, and then they will make decisions how to continue with this change request further on. Let's review now the new enhancements in the configuration engineer. And in fact, here the enhancement is related to the filtering. Now you can filter your engineering definition based on unit. This unit is allocated to product configuration, which means that when I filter based on the unit, then basically my engineering definition is filtered based on the product configuration, which is attached or allocated to this specific unit. Let's see here an example. So we have the product manager, and the product manager is defining all the variability and the rules and the product configurations of a specific model version. So we have here 3 product configurations, and we can see the differences between them in this view in terms of content. And we have here unit number 22, and this unit is attached to one of the product configurations. So the lead designer now, he wants basically to filter the engineering definition based on unit 22. He wants to understand what is the content from by visualizing the 3D. So he uses the filter, and within this filter, he does not add, in fact, model version, but he will add the unit because he's working on unit 22. Once he applies this filter on the engineering definition, he can see, he can visualize the content of specific subassembly, let's say, and he can hide certain components in order to focus on the one that he is interested in. Now, let's assume there is a new product configuration coming up for another customer, for example. So the product manager, he creates a new product configuration. He opens it in order to define it completely in terms of variants, in terms of rules, and so on. And now this product configuration will be applied to the same unit, because we want simply to replace the old product configuration with the new one with the same within the same unit 22. So simply he replaces the old product configuration with the new one. And now the designer can simply use the same unit in order to filter the same engineering item, but he will see something different because the new product configuration has different effectivities. So now once he applies this filter and he focuses on this specific subassembly, he sees the difference between this product configuration and the previous one.
Let us now take a look at the enhancement in the Engineering Data Exchange Manager role. In the Product Finder app, now 6W tags are integrated and grouping node support is provided. You can now use this 6W tag to filter the engineering definition and focus on required categories of the products. You can see in the slide there are 3 options provided in the 6W tags panel. With the select option, you can select multiple 6W tags. With the exclude option, you can exclude the products from engineering definition and focus on relevant products. And with the group option, you can group the engineering definition to get the required visibility. Please note that date tags and type tags cannot be grouped. Now let's take a look at the functionality through a demo video. You can see when you click on the 6W tags, 6W tag panel appears, and you can then select the 6W tag to filter the engineering definition and to focus on the relevant categories of component. The selected tag is appear beneath the selected tag section in the 6W tag panel. You can use the exclude option to exclude the products from engineering definition and focus only on the relevant set of products. So right now we are excluding transmission and harness from the mechanical breakdown. And you can see a tag applied success message appears when it is done. Once you apply 6W tag, you can open or launch the authoring session from the context menu of the assembly, and then you can begin your work. Now you can use the group option in the 6W tags panel to visualize the engineering definition from various standpoints. You can see various options available beneath the mechanical breakdown. Now we are selecting mechanical breakdown and we have chose to group it. Now you can see the engineering definition is grouped to give you the better visibility. So when we are selecting driving, all the products related to the drivings are highlighted in the 3D. Similarly, you can apply grouping on any available tag to visualize the engineering definition as required. So right now we are applying grouping on the zone. And as soon as you apply the grouping, the zone appears beneath the 6W tag section. And right now you can see the grouping is applied to the 3D as well. Once the grouping is done, you can again launch the authoring section from the context menu and start working on the engineering definition. Now let's take a look at new enhancement in the product manager role. The maturity states of various model definition objects are now renamed, and they are also assigned with colors in the maturity graph. The table that you see in the slide explains the object types and their previous and new maturity state names. For example, for variants and option groups, previous maturity states name were preliminary, active, and obsolete, wherein they are now renamed as private, available, and obsolete respectively. Now let's take a look at the demo video of this functionality. For the model version, these are the renamed maturity states, and you can see they are also colored for better visualization. For the variants, you can see these are the renamed maturity states. Also, they are colored. For the rules, you can see these are the new or renamed maturity states with the standard colors. Again, for the model definition maturity states, you can see as soon as we promote the maturity state, a success or a failure message appears depending on the result. And this shows the renamed maturity states for the model version. Now we've released the model version. Let's take a look at the product configurations. Before promoting the product configuration, let us complete it. And now you can see the renamed maturity states for the product configuration. And these are the renamed maturity states for the manufacturing plan. Let us now go through the new enhancements in the digital mockup preview engineer and digital mockup validation engineer roles. With this enhancement, you can now define default graphical properties of individual markers without affecting the properties of other marker. The default graphic properties and general properties are the two sections provided in this simplified marker preferences page. You can see in the drop down there are list of markers that can be selected, and available default graphic properties varies depending on which marker you choose to update. The table describes the list of the markers that are available to update the default graphic properties. And in the slide, you can see the location from where you can update the default graphic properties or access this particular page. With this enhancement, you can now choose to display the clearances with area instead of triangles. Clearances can now be displayed more precisely when you choose the area based on the defined accuracy, as you can see in the dialog box. When the display is set to area, triangles are replaced with area, and that too based on the accuracy that is defined in the preferences. The link to access these particular preferences is given in this particular slide. And the two images that you see explains the difference when you choose to consider area instead of triangle while computing the clearances and also the accuracy. With this enhancement, you can now consider electric features like segment and protection. With this enhancement, you can now consider electrical features like segment and protection that are defined in the electrical branch geometries while computing the interference simulations. In the snapshot, you can see the checkbox that is provided in the specification tab of the interference simulation definition dialog box. When this checkbox is selected, all the interferences between electric branch geometry and other parts can be computed. With this particular enhancement, you can now consider fasteners and fastened parts while computing the interference simulations. You can see a new checkbox is provided within the specifications tab of the interference simulation dialog box. When fasteners and check interferences with fastened parts checkboxes are selected, each fastener component like primary and secondary is checked against the fastened parts. This helps in more detailed analysis of fasteners and fastened parts. It is important to note that this new checkbox is only available when you have the fastener rule assigned. With this particular enhancement, you can now choose to display or hide individual interferences like clash, contact, and clearances, along with their quantifiers from the app options panel. This particular app options panel can be accessed from the Tools tab of the action bar. Now, let's take a look at demo video for all this functionality. You can define default graphical properties of individual marker to maintain the consistency in annotation. You can see from where you can access these particular selections. The default graphic properties for the text markers are being set now. It is important to note that available graphic properties varies depending on the which type of marker you select to update. For this particular marker, fill, edges, leader, and text are the properties that are being updated. Similarly, you can see for the rectangle, there are only fill and edges graphical properties available to update. We can update them and click on the apply and OK. Now markers are created based on the default properties that we've just set in the graphical properties. You can see when I'm creating rectangle, the color and all the other properties are taken from the default graphical property that we've just set. You can access these graphical properties of individual marker to further personalize your annotations. Again, the available properties to update varies depending on which type of marker you select. Right now we've selected the rectangle. Similarly, we can further customize or personalize the marker properties. Now let us see how we can compute interferences in electrical branch geometry features like segment and protection. Let us select group as a context while defining the interference simulation. We can select specific group within the engineering definition and choose it to compute the interferences. Now we've selected the electrical branch geometries checkbox and computed the interferences. We can click on the analyze interferences to load the interference metrics. You can see when you click on the interference metric, the interfering parts are brought up on your screen and you can further analyze them. Interference metrics corresponding to the same electrical branch geometry are grouped together. You can see the interferences between the electrical branch geometry and the other parts as well now. You can also display or hide clash, contact, or clearances independently to enhance the clarity in the 3D. So you can see in the app options panel, you can choose different icons. You can select or deselect different icons to display the clash, contact, or clearances or hide them. By default, clearances are displayed with triangular representations, but you can choose to update it and choose area, uh, and also define the accuracy value to display the clearances. To do that, you can access it through the preferences of the interference check app. You can see we've selected area and we have set the accuracy of 10 mm. By default, it is already set as 10 mm. And now you can see the clearances are displayed with the area representation and based on the accuracy that we have defined. Now let us see how we can consider fasteners while defining the interference simulation computation. Let us name this interference simulation and select the context. Now in the preferences, in the specification, you can see we have not selected the fastener checkbox and we only have the one contact in this particular assembly. Now let's edit the specification and select fasteners and check interferences with fastened parts checkboxes and recompute the interference simulation. Now you can see the fastened parts, the interferences between the fastened parts are computed. And when you click on the analyze interferences, you can see the interferences between the fasteners and the fastened parts. So right now you can see the interference between these two. Like in this case, it is a clash. And in this case, it's a clearance between the fastener and the fastened part, which is a plate in this case. Now let's take a look at the new enhancements in Digital Mockup Review Manager role. A new app named Design Review is introduced in this release. This is the dashboard app that lets you manage reviews and markups from anywhere and from any device. You can also create reviews, slides, measures, and sections. This app lets you create markers such as picture markers, text markers, and labels. You can also compare review objects and drawings and read validated objects, checks, and highlights using this app. This app basically consists of two views, slide view and review view. In the slide view, it displays the markups under the review and the slides created under these markups. And in the review view, it provides you the global overview of the review content. You can navigate through the review, highlights, and checks in this particular view. With this enhancement, you can now reply to a markup slide. A new reply slide is added in the main slide. You can see a name of the person who is responding along with his thumbnail photograph is appended on the preview of the slide. A highlight icon is also added on top of preview if the slide is pointed by a highlight. With this enhancement, you can now use two visual stamp markers to clearly communicate the result of your analysis with other collaborators. Two visual stamps such as validated and rejected are added in the markup tab of the action bar. The name and the photo of the person who has created this marker is also appended to the marker, and the date of the marker creation is also available. You can also put in additional comment to document more details regarding the stamp that you are putting in. With this enhancement, you can now use the new 3D marker responsive display command, which is available in the view tab of the actions bar. This option enables the responsive display of the markers, which means when you select it, it hides the 3D marker when you zoom out and displays them again when you zoom in. The opacity of the marker is also modified based on the current viewpoint. This ensures that your view is not overcrowded and not unreadable when you zoom out. You can now use the 3D compare option, which is provided in the markup tab of the action bar, to do a visual comparison of two products, two parts, or two revisions of the same product, and store the comparison result in a slide. A slide shows a visual comparison of the two revisions of the same product. You can change the color representing the two objects from the preferences as you would like. With this enhancement, you can now use the immersive graphics properties panel for editing and customizing the graphic properties of all the marker objects with editable graphical properties. When you select one or several marker and click on the graphic properties, the transient graphic properties panel appear. Depending on which marker you have selected, the available graphical properties to edit varies. You can then select and further use them to customize your annotations within the working view. Now let's take a look at the demo video for the new dashboard app, that is design review. You can stay informed on the latest design review updates through the 3D notifications. When you click on the 3D notifications in the properties widget, you can get to know the latest details about the updates on the design review. Now to open this design review in the design review dashboard app, you can simply drag the review and drop it in the design review dashboard app. Once the review is loaded in the design review dashboard app, a success message appears. There are few markers already created by validation manager in which the review slides can be stored. But before that, you can generate a format before beginning the design review. Now you can go to the markup tab of the action bar to add in as much slide as you would like in order to record your observation from different viewpoints. So right now we are recording observation from for the side views. You can add in the dimensions, your measurements, sections, and also the annotations in form of text markers or arrow markers. You can create multiple slides to capture review observation from different viewpoints. And you can use a respective marker to capture observation for that particular definition. Once you complete the annotation, you can click on the update viewpoint so that the latest screen details are stored within the slide. You can also create sections to find out the potential clashes and store this observation in the slide, again in form of annotations. You can see a text marker and arrow markers are added right now. And you can also seamlessly collaborate with other stakeholders who are responsible for the review. Now other stakeholders can get real-time access of the design review. They get a 3D notification when you mention them in the design review, and you can see in the properties they get the real-time details of that particular thing. Again, they can drag and drop them the design review to open it in the design review app, and they get the real-time access of the design review. Now you can see we can use a presentation mode to view the slides. You can also add a reply to the slides and document your observation. When a reviewer adds a reply, a name of the reviewer and the photo in form of thumbnail is appended on top of preview so that everyone in the design review community are aware of the person who has responded. You can also promote the design review to the frozen state when the review is complete and inform the validation manager about the progress of the review. A new role, Digital Mockup Validation Manager, is introduced in this release. It contains 4 dashboard apps: 3D Annotation Insight, Design Validation, Interference Simulation, and Validation Management. Using this role, you can validate the virtual prototype and resolve issues by formal management of a complete digital mockup review process through a web browser. Using this role, you can also define and manage all the review elements such as context, validated objects, checks, highlights, and markups. You can also validate review details in slides and add appropriate stamp such as validated, rejected to communicate the result. Also, for a critical issues observed during the review, you can generate a formal issue or a change action without leaving this dashboard app. You can also get a real-time access of all the review elements and their maturity or validation status. You can define interference simulation details, context specification, and initiate the interference simulation definition. You can also visualize existing interference simulations stored in the 3D Experience platform and update their user status and analysis status. The digital mockup review or validation engineer role is required to compute the interferences in 3D Experience CATIA. Now let us go through a demo video of this role. You can open the product to be reviewed in the design validation app and start defining the details to work collaboratively with other design reviewers. You can see we've named the design review, and in the design validation app in the left pane you can see all the review elements such as context, validated objects, checks, and highlights. Right now we are specifying the parts that needs to be validated during this design review process. You can also add description or attach existing formal requirement to the check of the design review to define the objective of the design review. You can see we've just attached a formal requirement to the check of the design review. You can also create multiple markups to for the design reviewers to add their review slides and record their observation in this particular markups. Once that is done, you can always inform design reviewers to begin the detailed design review. Through the 3D notifications, you can stay informed on the design review updates. From the properties widget, you can simply drag and drop the review in the design validation app to open it. You can review the slides created by design reviewers and add appropriate stamp such as validated and or rejected. You can also add in the detailed comments in form of annotations. You can create a highlight for the critical issues that you've observed during the design review meeting and also set up the priority for that particular highlight. You can also connect highlight to the impacted check. For the critical issues and especially the highlights, you can create a new issue or generate a formal issue for the complete traceability of the issue and its resolution. You can seamlessly access all the design review objects from the validation management dashboard app. You can identify the related issues of the highlight using the relations tab. Through the issue 3D review dashboard app, you can simply visualize and review the design changes that are made by designer to fix the reported issues. Once you verify the design changes, you can close the issue with detailed resolution statement. In the design validation app, then you can update the status of highlight and review checks. Then you can update the design review validation state to indicate the design review result. You can complete the design review by changing the maturity state to the release state. You can select the required product and initiate the interference simulation definition using interference simulation dashboard app. You can see you can define the interference context using required filters and groups through the context tab of the new interference simulation dashboard app. Right now we are selecting the group as a context, and through the specification tab you can define interference specification for clash, contact, or clearance. Now you can execute the interference simulation through a 3D Experience CATIA client. You can then visualize the interference simulations in 3D to perform analysis and update status for the interferences. For the issues observed, you can generate a formal issue to ensure the traceability of its resolution. Interfering parts and context are automatically added in the issue context. Interference metric is automatically attached to the issue. An owner of the interfering part is automatically assigned to the issue. You can update the members if needed.
IP Security Manager and IP Controlled Access. We have one enhancement related to setting of the physical location. First, we introduce a new widget to set a physical location in dashboard. And we also change the way you set the physical location in web. Previously, in web, it was possible to select physical location through either My Desk menu or Person menu. This is no longer available. Now, when working in web, the only way to set a physical location is during login from the security context selection screen. Now, to support that, we introduced a new setting, which is available in the Collaborative Space Control Center application. And the new setting replaces the previous setting in WebXML, which was relevant only for on-premise. This setting is now supports both on cloud and on-premise. In addition to that, previously, the user's last location was considered valid forever. Now, the default is 12 hours. This can, of course, be configured by the administrator. And anyhow, the user can also extend it by himself from 12 hours to a week through the credential dialog. Project Manager, we have a couple of new enhancements. The first one is a major one. Until today, we had only one risk matrix. And we received lots of requests from customers to allow them to configure their own risk metrics. They want to be able to have their own risk metrics based on their company risk strategy, or also in order to be compliant with the risk standards. So in 22x GA, we are providing a way to create a new risk metrics configuration, including defining the risk, the metric size, the labels, and the colors. And to support that, we introduced a new form, which is available within the risk management widget. And you can either create a new configuration or update existing one, except the default one that you cannot update. And this is done by uploading a JSON file. We have also to choose then the program to be associated to that risk matrix configuration, and we do that in the where used field, and this will be used when creating new risk to know which risk matrix configuration should be used. Here you see I'm opening the new configure risk matrix dialog from the risk management toolbar. In this scenario, I choose to create a new configuration. I browse and upload the JSON file, which contains the risk matrix configuration. You can see that the JSON file is a text file, contains the configuration title and name at the top. And it also defines the metric size, including all labels, and also you can configure and set the colors. In the where used field, I choose the program to be associated to that risk matrix configuration. Now, after creating it, when I come to create a new risk, and when creating a new risk, you remember there is a field for the risk context. I will set a project as a risk context. And because this project belongs to the program I previously associated with the new risk metrics configuration, this new metrics configuration is being displayed and used here in this case. A couple of new enhancements in the project portfolio manager. We have a new page that we added to see the details when there is a resource conflict. In this example, you can see here that we have two overloaded resources. Now, by clicking on the See Conflicts option, a new page is loaded and display the overloaded members along with the corresponding tasks across all projects. This member, we can see that this member is assigned to 100% of his time to two parallel tasks. So you know exactly what are the tasks which cause the load and in which projects. In addition to that, here at the bottom, you get a list of members working on the same project who are available at the time of the conflict and might help you to solve the problem. We added two new tabs in detail page. The first one is history, showing you the history of what happened to the item. And the second one is graph view, shows same information as in the related objects tab, but in a graph mode. Classification manager, we have a few new highlights. The first one is related to we enhance the public web services of IP classification. Now we also support customized type as classified items. So for example, if I'm using the web service to get the list of all classified items under a specific class, now if there are some classified items which are of customized type, I will get them as well. This improvement is related to classification attributes. While creating classification attribute, you can associate a real type attribute with a dimension. Then you can set a default value for that attribute. The value the value you use for the default value field must be entered in the dimensions default unit, which is MKS. For example, if I choose a dimension length, I would need to use the default value in meters. So in order to help the user and to avoid any mistake, because not necessarily the user is aware of this or remember the MKS, the default unit which is used is specified in the default value field here. In addition to that, in the attributes table of the attribute group, the default value column shows the values along with the units. This one is also related to classification attributes. We changed the label in Create Classification Attribute dialog from Native App Display Unit to Preferred Unit. This preferred unit is now applied to both IP Classify and Reuse widget as well as to the native application. Now, if the preferred unit is set, which is not mandatory, but if it is set, attributes values are always displayed in preferred unit, the one that we choose, everywhere and cannot be overwritten by any other preferences. In case the preferred unit is not set by the user, so the behavior is a little bit different. In native application, the attributes values are displayed in the units chosen in the Me preferences, and in dashboard, the units displayed in MKS unit system. A couple of UI improvements. Open with command, which you all know from the search results, allowing you to open an item in its other supported applications. So is now available also in IP classify and reuse widget. Second improvement is about changing the delete and open and remove icons in order to, this is done across the platform in order to meet Dassault UX recommendations. So the delete icon looks like a trash bin, and when you click on delete, you actually delete the item from the database. And the remove icon looks like a minus inside the circle, and it is used to remove the item from the context. For example, remove the item from a class, but it doesn't delete the item from the database. We added a new tab for attachments in IP classification widget and IP classify and reuse widget. Previously, you could add attachments to library or class, but only via the web application, and then the attachments were shown in the content panel together with the classified items. Now, after introducing the dedicated attachments tab, which is available in the information properties panel of the library and the classes, and as I mentioned, it's available in the IP classification editor widget and IP classify and reuse widget. In IP classification editor, the attachments tab, in the attachments tab, you can upload new documents, you can add existing documents as attachments, and also you can remove attachments. In IP classify and reuse widget, which is part of the CSV role, you can view the existing attachments, but you don't have any authoring capabilities. Sustainable Innovation Manager, KSM is the trigram, is a new role which we introduced in 22x GA. As you can see here, it consists of 5 applications, and currently it is available on cloud only. So using the Sustainable Innovation Manager, we allow companies to enforce sustainable goals in the area of performance and environmental impact. So with this role, we are providing some tools and some techniques to Sustainability Manager, who can first define the weight and the environmental targets that are relevant for sustainability and per selected product. So for example, you can define that the target for CO2 emission, the target for water use, mineral and metal depletion, and much more. And by the way, those environmental impacts come with standard environmental methods that we provide with this role. Then the second step would be for the Sustainability Manager to start and enrich the assessments with human activities by describing kind of material flow and processes within the product life cycle. For example of a human activity can be injection molding of plastic or transportation of raw material from supplier to manufacturer. We are working on this with a partner who provides us an activities database that we can choose from. This database includes a large set of activities and also a formula to calculate the impact of the activities on the environment. Sustainability Manager can also capture events such as risks and opportunities. which potentially may impact sustainability metrics. And after defining the targets, the human activities, the risks, the opportunities, Sustainability Manager can use multi-dimension analytics, which are provided by the role, to monitor the sustainability metrics evolution and assess if the weight and the environmental footprint are aligned with the targets that were defined at the beginning. Now, once having the analytics results, a sustainability manager can also perform trade-off studies. For example, decide to create a new design alternative, compare it to the original one, and finally select the best alternative based on the analytics results. So let's see how does that look in the system. First step would be to define targets on different dimensions that are relevant for sustainability. We set a target for the weight and other environmental impacts such as CO2 emission, water use, mineral and metal depletion, and more. Those environmental impacts comes with standards, environmental method that we provide with the role in order to be compliant with some ISO standards. So first you select the method and then you set up the targets for the impact indicators. Second step would be to start enriching the assessment by adding human activities and calculating the impact. For example, what is the impact for creating the frame made out of plastic and processed by injection molding? You can see that we try to anticipate all life cycle stages, and therefore we take into account the raw material production, the manufacturing processes, and also the end of life. We use formulas to calculate the impact, which consist of different eco-drivers. In this example, we added a logistic activity, a transportation activity with two eco-drivers, the weight and the distance. The weight value is known as it has been calculated in CATIA, but the distance is something we need to manually add. You can also add events such as risks and opportunities, including the probability of occurrence and their impact. For example, adding an opportunity of using recycled plastic instead of ABS to reduce the CO2 emission. After considering all those events, you can anticipate better the convergence of your metrics. As you can see on the screen, you have the target value, the best case scenario, and the worst case scenario. Now, after defining the targets, all human activities, risks, opportunities, you can run analysis and assess if the weight and the environmental footprint are aligned with the targets. So we provide for that multiple analytics. You can also drill down, assess the details, and reveal what systems or components contribute the most to the weight and environmental footprint. For example, you can see the environmental footprint is highly impacted by the batteries and then by the plastic frame, etc. You can drill down and investigate a specific indicator, for example, the CO2 emission. You can compare the different life cycle phases, and here you see that manufacturing phase contributes the most to the CO2 emission. You can analyze the most impacting human activities and see that the plastic production is in the third place. Then you can perform trade-off studies, for example, creating a new design alternative with recycled plastic for frame, and then compare and select the best alternative based on your analytics results.
With this release, we introduced the new role, Conversion Data Integrator for LandXML. This role enables users to reuse or migrate third-party files formatted in LandXML directly into the platform. Once on the platform, they can be leveraged in a number of processes, including design review, digital mockup, design in context, and manufacturing, among others. Let's take a closer look at this new role. You can load a LandXML formatted file directly into the 3D Experience platform through a dedicated user interface. Once this file is loaded in the system, a report is automatically created for review to validate the data. This imported topographical data is structured for independent review and subsequent editing in the specification tree architecture. This data can then be combined with data provided by any other discipline managed on the platform to support a collaborative, multidiscipline development process. Collaborative Designer for NX introduces support for the NX software release NX 1953 series. The support for this software release augments the existing support for the older versions of NX listed here. Collaborative Designer for Altium introduces support for variant design within Altium. Users can now assign new assemblies to the core design as well as variants of the design when saving to the platform. Users can supersede this capability by manually assigning different assemblies to the variants before save. Collaborative Designer for Cadence Allegro also introduces variant management support, specifically for Cadence HDL and Cadence OrCAD applications. As with Altium, assembly variants will be automatically saved to an individual 3D Experience product structure during the save operation, unless previously assigned manually. Collaborative Designer for CATIA V5 introduces a number of new enhancements in this release. Multiple shape visualization offers users the ability to visualize 3D shapes directly as opposed to only those modeled under a 3D part definition. This will improve users' ability to visualize data, as 3D part definitions alone are not sufficient to cover all types of data sets that may be loaded into the environment and need to be visualized. In concert with the prior enhancement, the user interface for CATIA V5 has been saved to control this new visualization capability of 3D shapes, allowing users to choose to activate them for multiple shapes within the specification tree. A new type mapping interface has been added to the platform management applications within the admin console to more easily define mapping between CATIA V5 object types and object types defined on the platform. To better support hybrid structures, users are now able to drive parametric values in the embedded XCAD design data directly from the CATIA V5 interface via parametric bridges. Subsequently, parametric values that are defined within CATIA V5 from any source can drive all aspects of the product definition regardless of the source of the underlying CAD data.